So the Redditors are intentionally driving out of business the hedge funds because they did the math, or somebody did, and figured that they could buy enough collectively to actually bankrupt gigantic hedge funds, which they don't really feel are so good for the country. And it's this massive shift in power because the retail small investors found out, hey, if we band together and use these communication tools, we can be as powerful or more powerful than the hedge funds, and we can just drive them out of business and make a profit too. It's an interesting story, and apparently it shows some hatred for the big money people that is bubbling into the, bubbling up from the public in a way that we've never seen before. Now, when I said Republicans would be hunted, and people would say to me mockingly, give me one example of that. Well, there it is. Andy now. You're all watching the news about GameStop, right? How many of you understand that story? So the basic story that a bunch of individuals on Reddit got together and decided to massively, collectively buy stock in this one company called GameStop. Now, this is having the effect of being a so you can see in the comments, there's lots of yeses, lots of yeses. Wow, I'm actually kind of impressed at the quality of this audience. And I mean that. I don't know how many general audiences would have so many people. I'm looking at the comments, and most of you say you understand that story. It's kind of impressive, actually. Jesus, look at the number of people in the comments who say they actually understand that story. It's a complicated story. I thought I was going to have to explain it to you. Wow. I think some of the smartest people in the internet are on this live stream now. This is amazing. I'm very impressed. Now, I suppose it's the people who understand it who are going to comment, but even still, I'm surprised. But let me give you the basic idea for if anybody doesn't know how this works. So there are big companies called hedge funds who try to make money by driving down the price of a stock. This is not good for the company that owns that stock because people are just manipulating their stock. The way they would do that is they would buy a contract, if you will, that says they will make money if the stock goes down. Now, if you see that a bunch of smart investors with a lot of money have just made big bets that a stock will go down, what are you going to do? If all the smart people just made giant bets that a stock is going to go down and you own that stock, you want to get the hell out of there, right? Because it's going down. Not only are they telling you it's going to go down, but they make it to go down. That's the manipulative part, right? There might be some stories that come out about some bad things happening at the company. They may be true, they may be more opinion, you don't know. But the big hedge funds have the power to drive down the price of a stock, which does nothing for you, does nothing for the company. Now, in some cases, they would argue that they're just adding efficiency and they're driving down the price of a stock that deserves to be driven down. In other words, they're not destroying good companies, they're destroying companies that have some issues. But keep in mind, they've gone after Tesla. Imagine if they had driven Tesla out of business. That was a possibility, I think. I don't know if they had that much power, but they did try to drive down the price of Tesla at one point, which makes Elon Musk not their friends. Let me just say that Elon Musk is enjoying watching the short sellers get taken. At least that's the reporting. So here's how it works, if I can explain this easily. Let's say you own some stock in a company called GameStop, and I can go to you and I can say, hey, I would like to borrow your stock for X amount of time, specific amount of time, and at the end of that, I will give you your stock back. And you would say, well, why would I let you borrow my stock? Why the hell would I do that? And there are two reasons. One is I'll give you a fee for borrowing it. You could think of it like interest, but it's not. It's like a fee for borrowing it for a while. And So you'd say, okay, I get a fee. But what about when you give it back to me? That stock might not be worth the same amount. I'll give you 100 shares, and when you give 100 shares back to me, are they still worth something? Because if the stock went down in the meantime, I got a little fee, and that's cool. But when you gave me my stock back, it wasn't worth anything. It went down to, $1 or something. So you would have lost. As the person who let me borrow your stock, you would be a loser in that case. Why would you do it then? Why would you ever let me borrow your stock? Well, the only reason you do it is that you think the stock is going to go up. So you think that when I give that stock back to you, it'll be worth more than when it was first borrowed, and enough more that you come out ahead. Not only did I get a fee for letting you borrow it, but when you gave it back, it was worth more than I gave it to you. Good deal, right? So you always have to have somebody who thinks something's going up and somebody who thinks it's going down to make a trade. One of them's right and one of them's wrong. That's how the stock market works. But you need somebody on both sides, right? So that's why somebody would lend you stock. They think it's going in the other direction. So let's say you're a hedge fund, and you've done one of these deals, and you say, I'm going to give this stock back to this guy. It's just 100 shares of stock. But the people at Reddit get together and they say, we don't have a lot of money individually. We're just people. But if we all get together and buy this stock like crazy, the hedge funds don't have a choice later of buying the stock at your higher price, and therefore you make a profit. Because they have a contract that says on this specific date, I have to go get stock that I've already sold, by the way. I borrowed your stock, but as soon as I borrowed it, I sold it. So as soon as you lend your stock to me, you don't have it anymore, but neither do I. I borrowed it and sold it. All I have is cash. So at the end of that contract period, all I have is cash, but I owe you stock. You got to get your 100 shares back. So I have to go buy those in the market. But the Reddit people drove up the price. Now I can't afford to buy them. I don't have enough money. I can't get enough money. There's nothing I can do, but I owe this gigantic amount of money because the Redditors drove up the stock price. How do I give you back the money, the shares I borrowed? I can't afford them. So I go out of business. So I go bankrupt at least, maybe not out of business ultimately. But so the Redditors are intentionally driving out of business the hedge funds because they did the math, or somebody did, and figured that they could buy enough collectively to actually bankrupt gigantic hedge funds, which they don't really feel are so good for the country. And it's this massive shift in power because the retail small investors found out, hey, if we band together and use these communication tools, we can be as powerful or more powerful than the hedge funds, and we can just drive them out of business and make a profit too. Now, if you're listening to this and saying to yourself, hey, I think I just found a way to make some easy money. I'm going to buy me some Gamestop stuff, and that stuff's going to keep on going up, and I'll just make a quick profit. A lot of people did that. A lot of people got in low, probably sold high, made a ton of money with almost no time going by. But don't assume that because it happened to you. There should be, in the long run, about as many losers as winners, right? Because there always has to be a buyer, always has to be a seller. Otherwise, there's no transaction. So in the long run, you're going to get, I don't think this is exactly true, but something closer to as many winners as losers. So if you want to flip a coin and bet your entire net worth on it, I would advise against it. It's sort of a coin flip. It's not a guaranteed, it's not safe. And if the coin flip doesn't go your way, it's not that you didn't make money, it's that you lost it all, right? You just lost it. So super risky. If you're trying to figure out how risky it is, super risky. But if you have lots of people putting in small amounts that wouldn't make a difference to their life if they lost them, hundreds of thousands of people putting in $1,000 a piece, say, wouldn't change their life if they lost them. So I think this is really, it's not a question of what's right or wrong, good or bad. We do see that The Robinhood app apparently stopped letting people buy the stock. They can sell it but not buy it, which is good for the hedge funds but not good for the retail people. So let's see how much power the hedge funds have, because the hedge funds are still trying to manipulate it in their direction. So it's a battle of wills at the moment. We don't know which way it's going to end, but it's an interesting story, and apparently it shows some hatred for the big money people that is bubbling up from the public in a way that we've never seen before. Somebody is mentioning Andy No, GNO, no? And apparently he had to move out of the country, or he did move out of the country because of death threats against him and his family for just reporting. That's it. He just reported mostly on Antifa and Black Lives Matter protests. But for that, his family was targeted. He got lots of death threats and has moved out of the country. Are there any Democrats who've had to move out of the country yet because of death threats? Nope. Do you remember when I told you that Republicans would be hunted? Now, I don't know if Andy would. I don't think he would classify himself as a Republican. I don't know. I don't know one way or the other. But since he was clearly reporting on stuff that the left didn't like, and I think he gets, Andy's probably has more followers on the right, he would be associated with them. Now, when I said Republicans would be hunted, and people would say to me mockingly, give me one example of that. Well, there it is. Andy No. He was hunted. Literally, they found his family, they found his home, and they did threats against him and his physical home. He was hunted. He had to leave. They moved to Canada and Spain on their own when Trump won in 2016. Oh yeah, that didn't happen, somebody says. Yeah, nobody really moved. Rand Paul was hunted by his neighbor, right? Steve Scalise was hunted by that shooter, but that was different situation.